Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 8. So we are heading into the final stages of the current graphic novel that, of course, having Deathstorm as the villain, which, were with him wanting to draw enough power from, feeding off the grief of others in order to empower Caitlin to then make his bride, by making her immortal, I guess, just like he is. And there was, of course, a curiosity factor around why it took until Season 8 for the after effects of the season 1 finale to play out on the show, and that is of course because Deathstorm, via the Black Flame, had to travel all across space, in search for Caitlin. Now I think we are all wondering how they will wrap this arc up, and more specifically, the ramifications surrounding the wrap up of the arc as well, such as how Deathstorm is defeated, as well as who pays the price of taking him down, as we know there is a confirmed death happening this coming week in episode 13 for a Team Flash member. Not some random character like Kramer or Chillblaine or Marcus or anything like that. It's a Team Flash member. But that is of course for us to wait and find out in less than a week from now, and it will be very interesting to see how everything does play out, including the death and just the whole Deathstorm wrap up as well. But in this video, we are going to be going over some Fallout quotes provided to us from people from the show after the events of last episode. And then we'll also be going over some promo material that was just released for episode 15 for this season. So there's a decent amount to talk about. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts and predictions and theories and all that. Always curious to read what you guys are thinking. And of course, you're going to enjoy the video, want to show your support, drop a like, takes 2 seconds, helps out a lot. But firstly, after the events of last episode, TV Line was able to interview Danielle Nicolette, who of course plays Cecile on the show, and she did give a preview of how things are going to play out going from last episode into the next one, which does appear to be the quote-unquote finale of the storyline, though episode 14 appears to be the proper wrap-up, but at least Deathstorm will be dealt with by the end of episode 13. That's what I'm getting from what's being said throughout all of this. Anyway, here is what Danielle said about Deathstorm and heading into the end of the story. I mean, he's not really the type that can be bargained with. He's possessing me, he's haunting everyone else, he's super powerful. There's not going to be a lot of negotiating. Instead, it's going to be a matter of figuring out how to beat him, and that is no easy measure. Once we discover what he actually is, we realize that beating him will be harder than anyone we've had to beat before. Now, of course, we saw in the trailer for the next episode that pretty much all of Team Flash is being haunted by ghosts of their past, if you want to call it, with it still being up in the air whether Eddie falls into that with Iris, because there is a connection between Eddie and Ronnie that a lot of people are forgetting about, which might make Eddie a bit different than Chester's dad, Allegra's cousin, and Barry's mother returning. And there was another portion in the interview with Danielle Nicolette where it said that Cecile isn't affected by what Deathstorm is doing, at least in regards to seeing ghosts of her past, because she is the conduit for Deathstorm. So pretty much his communication channel of sorts, like we saw last episode when she was possessed and was just, it was just him talking through Cecile. In regards to the beating or taking down of Deathstorm, we know that the Mac is going to be used, not an Apple Mac, not a Mac computer, but, the, what's it called? The mental augmentation chamber. I think that's what it's called. But it's going to be used in a portable manner, hopefully via Frost. Now, the Mac, of course, being what was used on Chester to contain his powers at the beginning of Season 6. His powers are connected to the Singularity like Deathstorm is, so let's see if that works. I'm not too sure if it will, and that's maybe where the errors come up and the issues and the danger comes up next episode, but maybe it does work, but it comes with a side effect. Once again, that's for us to wait and find out. Now, to follow on from what Danielle said there, we also had Robbie Amell, who plays Ronnie, Raymond, and also the voice of Deathstorm, who said this about what's coming next with Deathstorm in this story. It's really fun to be the bad guy and put Team Flash through a bit of a ringer, and it was really cool to get to do what Deathstorm does in episode 13. It was kind of a big bonus for me in getting to come back. Now, we of course know that Deathstorm did quite a lot of damage to the citizens of Central City throughout the various stages of last episode, killing well into the double digits and drawing a good amount of energy and power to hopefully transfer over to Caitlin. But this now makes you wonder what is coming our way in episode 13. Does he do something even bigger and badder than what we've already seen him do? Of course, we know that a Team Flash member is dying, like we said earlier in the video, but I wonder if there is other stuff outside of that. And we also don't know if Deathstorm is actually the one who straight up kills or murders this Team Flash member that's meant to be dying. It could be another reason for the death. But I've enjoyed Deathstorm a lot for the time we've had him on the show, and I'm happy they aren't dragging it out for too many episodes, because it is just an evil entity for the most part. There's no like unknown history that we have to explore and uncover, or like the mystery's already done. The black flame was Deathstorm. That's the mystery. So we're pretty much just seeing the fallout and the after effects of that mystery being solved and revealed and everything like that. So they don't want to drag it out too much, and I think the episode amount we're getting is probably the right amount, but sometimes you don't know that until the actual story ends. So I guess we can judge that when the story ends. But of course, in regards to it ending and coming to an end, let's hope it finishes well, because I've enjoyed it for the most part, pretty much all the episodes involved, so hopefully it's a strong ending. Now, another thing I've seen going around is that apparently Danielle Nicolette said there is a 3-part season finale. And unfortunately, that is just, I think, people not reading the quote correctly, because that's not what it said. It's not a 3-part season finale. It's a 3-part storyline, and this is the finale. So it's the finale for the 3-part storyline, which is this Deathstorm arc. So I've seen people spreading that around. People have been saying, hey, this. I know it's a couple of Instagram accounts pushing it, but that's not what Danielle Nicolette said. It's a storyline finale for a 3-part storyline. So this 3-part storyline with Deathstorm is episode 11, 12, and 13, which is Resurrection. 11, 12, 13, yeah. Episode 11, episode 12, episode 13, which is Resurrection, Death Rises, and Death Falls. So that's the 3-part storyline. Though, as I think I said earlier in the video, the story does technically finish with episode 14, and it also stretches back to the beginning in episode 8 when the Black Flame first started killing people, and like Jacob Birch was initially blamed for it. But this whole Deathstorm thing and the story revolving around and like the motivations really does start in episode 11. So 11, 12, 13, 3-part storyline. So yeah, I just thought I'd make that clear before people go, get to the end of the season and go, hold on, I thought it was a 3-part story, 3-part finale, when that was actually never said. And to finish up the video, we got the first promo material for episode 15 for this season, which is otherwise entitled Into the Still Force. And I say first because it's the first just like solely focused on this episode, though we did get some footage in that trailer that was released last week that contained footage for a handful of future Flash episodes, including episode 15. Now, this episode was actually directed by the showrunner for the show, that of course being Eric Wallace, and this is supposed to be the first of 3 more interlude episodes for this season, that being 15, 16, and 17, which are directed by Eric Wallace. I think Danielle Panabaker does 16, and then Katie Lotz, who plays Sarah Lance on Legends, she directs 17. So it's a cast and crew combination, interlude things. However, we can tell based off the title that this will center around the fallout from Armageddon and what's going on with Iris most likely, and also possibly what's coming our way at the end of the season, which we will bring up after reading out the synopsis. So they say interlude, but it's not really like the interludes we had last season, because even the interludes earlier on this year, well, even like the Bart and Nora episode played into what's going on now, and of course episode 8 was seen as an interlude episode. For the most part. So the interlude episodes is more of a stretch term, and they still seem to include storylines going on throughout the season, unlike last season, which those episodes were like sort of completely disconnected from what was going on from the rest of the season. But yeah, here is that synopsis for episode 15. The Flash gets an assist from XS. Meanwhile, CCPD enlists Chester for help when a mysterious device is found at a crime scene. So the synopsis is pretty straightforward and doesn't really highlight too much or give too much away. Like, it doesn't even mention the Still Force in the synopsis, though the title does, so is there a need to if the title says it? But as I said, we had some footage for this episode already in that trailer from last week, and this is also the episode in which we had some set photos of Barry walking throughout the Still Force, running into things like a newspaper that said that Zoom and Godspeed had messed up Central City. Now, as we know, Dion is able to see the future throughout the Still Force, so if Barry is in the Still Force and walking around it, maybe this is a newspaper from the future, or maybe the Still Force is so messed up because of what's going on that it's affecting the past as well. So maybe that newspaper with Zoom and Godspeed messing up Central City, instead of being dated for like 2025 or something in the future, it's dated in like 2019 or 2020 or something like that. So in the past, but of course that didn't happen in our timeline. So that might make Barry freak out a bit that things are changing. But yeah, thanks to that trailer that came out last week, we know that we see Barry and Nora in the Still Force. Now, Dion is also in this episode because, once again, set photos, we saw him on set with Barry in this episode. And of course, last episode, We saw Dion going all weird and just disappearing as well from all the issues with the Still Force, and he said he himself was feeling the time sickness like Iris was. So maybe this episode is Barry searching for Dion because the Still Force is going a bit crazy and Dion isn't there to control it. So maybe that's why Nora's in this episode as well, because she runs back and just alerts Barry that something is wrong, and she's feeling the first effects of it in the future because maybe that's where things are starting to change. Or maybe it could be because of someone being gone. Now, that person would be Iris. So maybe Nora like feels that Iris is gone, or maybe she was traveling through time herself, or whatever it might be. But Nora picks up that Iris is gone. Maybe not before Barry, but she just picks up on it on her own, sorry. And she runs back to the past, our present, to talk to Barry and figure out what's going on. Because this is supposed to be, I think, the first episode that Iris is not in the episode in a stretch of 4 episodes. So episode 15, 16, 17, and 18, there's no Iris. And then she comes back in episode 19. Maybe the end of episode 18. But for the most part, in regards to a full episode being back, episode 19 is her first one back. So that should mean that in episode 14, so not this week's episode, but the next one, she disappears. Now, we know she's in that episode because we know that she goes to that funeral. So maybe she disappears in like a cliffhanger scene at the end or something like that. But yeah, Iris is meant to be gone for a good 4 episodes or so in this back half. And I think this is going to be maybe even what a lot of the interlude episodes include. I wouldn't say revolve around them, but include maybe the search for Iris and just the issues with the Still Force as a whole. But in regards to the issues with the Still Force as a whole, one thing needs to be remembered that was brought up in Armageddon, was mentioned really once and never brought back, but Eric Wallace suggested not to forget things from Armageddon. And this is an important one when we think about the Still Force being weird and Iris's time sickness, and that's the negative Still Force. Will that be brought back up again? Will that be brought back up in this episode, into the Still Force episode? You know, you think it'd be a suitable one to bring it up in. And if that's the case, and there is some issues with this negative Still Force and how it's affecting the regular Still Force, is this connected to Thawne? Because, I mean, if one person's going to be behind it all and maybe is messing with people, it seems like it would be Thawne. So I do wonder if this is the first episode, or an episode which focuses on that, and then that maybe leads into what's happening in the last handful of episodes of this season, which lead into the season finale and what's going on there. I'm very curious to see how it plays out, because everything I'm seeing from these interlude episodes, there might be one which is like a straight up filler episode. Eric Wallace has said there's an episode that focuses around Allegra. I know we have to deal with another one because last season's one was probably the worst episode of the season, but hopefully it still involves some relevant stuff for the main storylines for this season, and maybe it revolves around the negative Still Force or some issues around that. But it just seems like these interlude episodes aren't going to be just straight up filler episodes like they were last season, because even the ones this season didn't feel that overly fillerish outside of maybe the Goldface one, but even then that developed the whole Kramer-Barry relationship, which we're still seeing in the current storylines that are relevant. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out, but yeah, let's just hope that they are relevant and not fillers like last season, because I think there's a lot that needs to be progressed as we head into the back or the end of this season. But yeah, guys, that's it to talk about. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions, thoughts, theories, predictions, all of that. I'm always curious to read what you guys are thinking and how things are going to play out in the various episodes we talked about in this throughout this video. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.